Sexting sequences or scripts, one of the most effective ways of making money in the OnlyFans DMs. Whether you're making a few $100K a month or you're just starting out, this video has something for you. I'll be running you through my entire system for creating the best sequences possible, from planning them to requesting them from the creator and then going on to test them. And I've even included free resources that I actually use, and I'll show you how to use them. So you'll definitely want to watch this one. It's going to make you a lot of money. Now, if you're not aware, a sexting sequence or script is a way of selling content on OnlyFans where you sell multiple pictures and videos as if they're happening live. They get progressively more explicit and expensive as the fan gets turned on, and it makes a lot of money. Now, the best way to use sexting sequences at scale is by writing out the copy, testing it over time, and then making iterations to improve it. But the first step is going to be requesting the content from the creator. So I'm going to show you how to do that first. For writing out the content plan itself, I would recommend using a standard template that's easy to understand. I use a table that looks something like this, but don't worry, I'll be sharing my one with you. The way I would recommend structuring the document is by having your basic universal guidelines at the top, things like hide natural light, it's meant to be live, make it seem as authentic as possible, things that would apply to every sequence. Then having some kind of sequence theme or summary, just telling the creator what kind of outfit, the setting, why we're requesting this sequence, so what it's going to be used for. Of course, that can help them to create it in the most authentic way. Then all you need is the content plan itself, directing them on how to create each piece of content, and a Google Drive folder link if that's how they submit the content. So you can create your own template if you like to do that, but I have mine in the description, so you can download that now. This is the sexting sequence template itself, pretty straightforward. If you want to make any changes to it, when you make a copy into your own Notion, you can edit it however you want. At the top, I've got the basic guidelines, then a section for the sequence theme, just replace the text there. Here, there's a section for the Google Drive folder link. You just highlight it, hit Control K and paste the link in there and just delete the helper text there. Here we have the content plan section itself, pretty straightforward. Every piece of content that you want to be free, just highlight it green. Everything else, don't highlight it at all. Here you've got a section for the tag. So what the VA is going to tag the content with in Infloww or whatever CRM you use. The video number is just what the creator will label the pieces of content with in the folder. So it's easy for the VA to locate each piece of content. Then you've got the content description here and the duration. If you have some kind of helper video on sexting sequences, you can just paste it in here as a loom. If not, you can just delete the whole section. This is an example of what the template would look like when it's completely filled out. Got the theme in here. If we click on that, it's going to open up the Drive folder for the creator to upload the content. We've got all of our tags in here, so the VA knows exactly what to label each piece of content with. We know what's free, what's not free, got the descriptions in there, how we spoke about, and the duration. Over time, I've had so many people complain to me that they make a content plan for their creator and all of the videos are wrong or not what they intended. I promise you, it's that your content plans make no sense. Writing copy is a skill, and the biggest mistake people make is over-directing what they want the creator to do. Then you put your left hand to your left side and you turn around and look back at the camera. You need to give them a bit of freedom to do it their way. Enough direction that they know what to do, but not too much that it gives them analysis paralysis and they just procrastinate or never end up doing it. For each piece of content, this is how I will write the instructions out. The first line is for the camera positioning. That would be selfie style or propping the phone up. I would recommend having a bit of a variety throughout your sequence just to keep it interesting. The next line is what the creator does, but written in simple terms. Start by teasing with your top, take it off slowly, nipple play. Very simple. And something that does help, use the same key words for things that the creator will be doing a lot, like strip tease, light hand play, dildo teasing. By using consistent wording in all of your sequences, creators are going to be able to easily pick up on what you mean. After that, we'll have a line with some extra notes like be more vocal in this one or laugh while you do it, and even explaining why they're doing that thing. By giving creators the reason that they're doing something, they're probably going to be able to create it more accurately to what you wanted them to do. If it's a sequence where the creator seems like they're doing it for the first time, by putting a short line explaining that, they'll notice seem more nervous, shy, that kind of thing. Then you just repeat those 3 steps if the creator does multiple things in a video. So multiple poses, camera position, what they do, extra notes and why, and repeat. Now I'm not gonna read them out, but if you pause the video, there's a few examples of using that structure. Something else I like to do that really helps on the back end is have one column on the content plan which has a tag for each piece of content. That's just for the VA who uploads the sequence into the vault. They can just tag each piece of content accordingly. So if a chat is going to freestyle for some reason, they can see what the order is and a brief description of what happens in the content. It looks like this on Infloww, but you can also do it on Creator Hero, Only Monster, whatever CRM you use. But how do you actually plan a good sexting sequence? Something I like to do is start with initiation pictures. Now this is different to teasers. These are pictures that can be sent out as mass messages the first 1 or 2 weeks you use the sequence, so you can try and transition everyone at the same time and make a lot of money. Just send one every 2 or 3 days. They can just be pictures in different poses. One could be a mirror selfie, one could be lying flat on the bed. Try to make them look different so it doesn't seem like the same night every single time. On the topic of transitioning, you can request wall content that may help you to transition into your sequence. Something like the creator getting a new toy, a new outfit, something happening, and then that ties in to the story of your sequence. Now from my testing, video teasers have performed best. Some people like to use pictures for the first thing. Personally, I've seen higher retention with video teasers, but I would recommend having some pictures throughout the sequence for added realism. The less structured and more realistic you make your sequence, the more subscribers that are going to believe it. Now, something I've seen to be extremely effective is for your first teaser in the sequence, don't make it sexual. Make it seem like a completely normal video that the creator would just send, like her drinking water, choosing a show to watch, something that can set up the story behind your sequence. Now, the reason for that is, if you send a video straight away and it's the creator going, babe, I'm horny, wanna have some fun, they're gonna know exactly what you're doing. It's gonna make it seem like you have a plan to sell them and less subs are going to believe it. But if you send this verification clip like 10 messages before it starts getting sexual, it's gonna be much more believable that it's happening live. Once you get to your pay-per-view steps, each step should get more exciting and ideally longer. Sure, you can have 2 videos in a pay-per-view and hide the lengths, but if the videos get at least 30 seconds longer each time, sometimes just showing the length can actually increase the unlock rate. But again, that's going to be something you need to test for yourself. I would spread some free content throughout the sequence that makes the fan feel more appreciated, more turned on potentially. It even makes it seem more believable. Now, if you want to get more advanced, you can add paths in your sequence. For example, when you're about to send a piece of paid content, would you prefer me to do this or this? The subscriber says whatever. You have 2 videos and you send them the right one. 2 different poses, 2 different toys, speaking 2 different languages, whatever it may be. I'm not sure about the other CRMs, but at least on Infloww, when you make the message sequence with your script, you can make conditional steps. So the chatter asks, which angle would you prefer? The subscriber answers, and then it says, if this, send this video, if that, send that video. So once you've got your content all planned out, the next step in making an effective sequence is writing the script that the chatters will use. So quickly, I want you to go to the description and download the sequence template and the script reversal tool. I'll explain how to use them in a second. Now keep in mind, I use Infloww, so I'm going to give you instructions on how to create message sequences using Infloww. I'm pretty sure it's quite similar on Only Monster, Creator Hero, I'm not sure. We write out all of our message sequences on those spreadsheets. Don't worry, I'll show you how to use them in a second. But basically, each line is a unique message. You'll notice in the spreadsheet that there's 3 columns, one called name, one called description, and one called notes. That notes section allows you to write little instructions that the chatters will be able to see when they're sending that step of the sequence. I like to keep it really simple and use the same kinds of instructions every time. Wait for reply, it means send every message up to this point, and then wait for reply. Caption for pay-per-view, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. pretty self-explanatory. You can also put caption for teaser. Something else we like to put in the messages is asterisks that indicate something that the chatter has to fill in themselves. The most common example will be the subscriber's name. So in the instructions, you would write replace the asterisks with subscriber's name or with creator's favorite show, something like that. Now, I'm not saying this is the only way you can do it, but I would strongly recommend using something consistent, otherwise it's going to be very hard to build a system your chatters understand. There is an art to making a scripted conversation that actually flows well without the subscribers going, oh, is this pre-recorded? Are you a bot? One of the simplest and most effective tips I can give you for that is if you ask a question in your sequence, obviously you wait for the subscriber to reply, but if you contribute something to the conversation after that, you don't necessarily have to reply to what they said. For example, I could ask you, what's your favorite movie? You say Frozen 2, you weird cunt. I don't know. But I don't have to respond to you saying you like Frozen 2. I could just say, oh, well, I really like The Incredibles. And then the conversation continues, doesn't seem scripted. Obviously, there will be times where your chatters need to go off script, and they need to be prepared to do that and not just send the steps blindly. That being said, it will happen less often once you get good at writing a natural script that flows well. You really want to think about where to put those wait for reply steps, because if you think about it, every time you get the chatter to wait for the fan to say something, there's a chance the subscriber doesn't reply. And that's when you lose someone that could have spent more money. So while you should include the wait for reply steps, really be thoughtful about where you put them. Make sure your questions are easy to reply to. And as the script progresses, you're probably going to want less of them. Now, once you start filling up an account with more and more sequences, they can get a little bit chaotic if you don't organize them well. So this is my entire organization system that we use on Infloww. This label is for each sequence step itself. So the little column that says name on the sequence template, you just put, say, bathroom sexting version 1, #1, and then #2 for the next step. That one's not super important, but that's what I do. We use this emoji key for not only our sexting sequences, but every script we use, whether it's active or inactive, if we're currently using that sequence, whether it has content attached. If it doesn't have this one, it means that the chatter can just freestyle and put in whatever content they would feel suits it best. That indicates our intro sequences, so the ones you should use with new subscribers. Sexting sequences, if it's a pay-per-view pitch for selling like an expensive video, a support money script, or a conversational script. I'm a bit autistic, so I like to name it in this order, so it looks like that. You don't have to do that, that's what I do. But it does really help for chatters to make a plan of which sequence to use, find it quickly, and get to monetizing as fast as possible. This is the sequence template you can use to upload your sequences directly onto Infloww. They do actually give you something like this already, but I've just edited this one to put my organization system here if you want to use it, and a section for the sequence description there. It'll look like this when it's fully filled out. You'll notice that the sequence is actually written from bottom to top. You actually have to put it in this way, otherwise Infloww reverses it and it's upside down inside Infloww. So that's pretty stupid. But to deal with that, I've got this script reversal tool, and the way it works, let's say we're going to make shower sexting B1. You want to put #1, copy down, let's say we want 30 steps. It's going to just order it the right way here. So if we start writing our scripts like hello world, step 2, whatever, then we put our instructions here, wait for reply, caption, for pay-per-view 2, whatever. It's going to give us the correctly formatted version on this side. We can just copy that there, go back to our template. You want to right click, paste special, values only, and then it's going to be formatted the right way. The reversal tool can also display your script. So if your VAs are working on them and they want to show you, they can just come here, copy that there, and then paste it into Discord or Telegram, whatever you use. You can also use it to read finished scripts that are already formatted correctly in the template. You can just copy them like that, come over here, paste it into this display section like that, and it's going to show you your script here. It just makes it a lot easier to read than trying to read from bottom to top in a spreadsheet. Really quickly, in case you haven't seen how to upload sequences from the spreadsheet, you just come to the script section on Infloww, click on this plus, import from Excel, click here, put the script in there and import it. Should say you've imported however many. If it says any failed, you've written too many words in that step. Now you click on sequences, click on plus, add sequence, import from tag. You should see the sequence that you've just imported. Click confirm, and they're all going to be the right way up, and you can start linking the content. This is why it helps to have the description here. You can just copy that. The VA can just paste it right in there, and then the chatters can see all of it. Just a little tip. When you go to link your content to your pay-per-view steps, make sure that this box is checked as paid. Some people miss that, and then you just send the message with a free piece of content, and we don't want that. One of the hardest parts to master in your sequence is the transition, the moment where it goes from normal conversation into sexting and selling. A lot of agencies have no strategy for this. They just say, I'm in bed, want to see something, and then they send a pay-per-view. If you make it really obvious and seem like you have a plan to sell them, it gives fans a chance to opt out and go, I don't want to spend tonight, before they're turned on and impulsive. It also makes it seem a lot less authentic. Now keep in mind, the standard transition framework I'm about to share with you is only for subscribers that aren't making the conversation sexual themselves. If a fan subscribes to the page and says, show pussy now, don't start using this, that's retarded. If they transition themselves, great, but what I'm about to show you is to make it feel like their idea if they're not doing that. This is how a standard transition goes. You start a completely non-sexual conversation. Let's use the example of a post-workout sexting sequence. You could literally ask, how much do you think you could bench? That starts the conversation about them lifting, you lifting. Continue that conversation for 8 to 10 messages or getting 3 to 4 replies from them. Remember, you don't want to wait for too many replies from them because it gives them a lot of chances to opt out and just ghost you. Maybe the conversation could be banter about how you think you could outlift them. That's when you move on to a non-sexual if you were here question, and this is the moment where you actually transition. What you're trying to do is to get the subscriber to imagine being with the creator, and if you keep talking about that, where is that realistically gonna go? If you say, if you were here, I'd distract you while you were doing your set. Most times, the subscribers on OnlyFans, they're gonna react to that and they will start sexting. But if they don't, and this is very important, it's where a lot of chatters fuck up, you wanna use humor and flirting to push them and fully transition if you need to. If you go, I would distract you while you're doing your set by sucking your dick so hard. Doesn't seem realistic at all. But maybe if you just sent a little cheeky teaser of the creator kind of showing her ass in a mirror selfie, what if I did this, seems a lot more authentic and believable. And remember, when you're selling a sexting sequence, you're selling the experience. If they wanted to just watch really vulgar sexual porn, there's heaps of that out there. Give them an experience that feels personal, intimate, and genuine, and they will spend more money. I hope you are taking value from the video so far. If you are, I would really appreciate it if you would quickly leave it a like. It helps me out a lot. I try to put as much value into these videos as possible, and all I ask is that you can like it, subscribe, and share it with anyone that it might help as well. If you have any problems that you're facing that I might be able to make a video on to help you, leave it in the comments and I'll try to get to all of them. Thank you. I almost forgot, I have an entire video with 20 different transitions that you can use, so check that video out later. Finish this one, trust me. Now, like I said before, you don't want to use that previous transition strategy with the subscribers that just come in hot and they just want something straight away. Send me BG, babe. Do you do solos? Now, some agencies' strategy is to just go, oh, well, can we get to know each other first? I'm not comfortable yet. Personally, I don't like doing that because it kind of used to work, but now so many people do it that they just go, another agency, or I can't be bothered, I can get a sex tape on this page for $3. So what I like to think is, okay, they're gonna come in, want something straight away, they don't really wanna talk, so we should try and sell them, but ideally, we can sell them the thing that will generate the most money. This strategy I'm about to show you gives you a way of trying a sequence no matter what the subscriber comes in asking for. Because it can be hard to approach these situations situations in the right way where you don't turn them off or just buckle and end up sending the BG they wanted for $150 and then they fuck off. Let's say that a fan comes in and they just say, "Do you have BG?" Our goal now is to try and make space in the conversation, so keep them replying, seeming like we will give them what they want, but something's happened. A few examples are, "Oh my God, I will in 2 seconds, but I just locked myself out of the house. My Uber Eats just exploded at the front door. Can I have 2 seconds and then I'll be with you?" A lot of the time, they're gonna just go, "Yeah, sure, that's okay," because they are actually humans. The trick is, seem like you are going to give them what they want. Now that you've made some space in the conversation, if it's a new subscriber, you can use this opportunity to ask them some really basic questions to profile them. Name, location, maybe job. That's it. Don't ask these open-ended questions like, "So how did you spend your day?" They clearly don't want to talk. Just say something like, "Look, I know small talk is really weird on OnlyFans, but while I'm locked outside the house, do you mind just telling me your actual name? What can I call you?" And then you could say, "Oh, whereabouts are you from, if you don't mind me asking?" "I'm in Chicago, so locking myself out of the house at 4 a.m. really sucks." Something like that. I would recommend doing that for 6 messages max, or you have a high chance of losing them. Then the plan is to go straight into your sequence. You want to send a teaser, "I finally got back in the house." Maybe you can just ask an "if you were here" question. "Well, if you were here, how would you warm me up now? I have some ideas." You do want to be more aggressive, but like I said, it's their idea, they want to buy something. This gives you a chance of selling a sexting sequence, which will probably generate more money than just sending like one solo video. Very important though, if the fan asks for their original request 2 more times, or they really don't seem like they want to buy the sequence or engage with sexting at all, still send it. You still want to make the money. This just gives you a chance to sell something that will hopefully make more money. So what I would recommend for your sequences, have a version with a standard transition and have a version with an aggressive transition, so your chatters are prepared for every situation. So now you know how to transition into your sequence. What do you say from then to keep subscribers interested, engaged, and spending money? Well, it really comes down to sexting. And there are 2 main ways that you can do that. The first way, and I personally have seen a lot more success with this, is story-based sexting. Basically, this means you're telling a story of what the creator and subscriber would be doing if they were together. Let's go back to our post-workout example. Our transition was, well, if you were working out, doing your set, I would distract you while you're doing it. The point of that is to start our sexting story, them working out together. Then the story continues from there, and it's like the creator and fan are fantasizing together about doing this stuff in this scenario, which then turns the creator on, making her do the things in the videos. The reason this works really well is you can talk about almost anything. You're not limited by what happens in the content, which makes it really effective for lewd content where the creator maybe doesn't do as much or show as much, because the sexting and the content do not have to be directly related. The sexting will be paced naturally by the flow of your story. What I mean by that is, as you go through this fantasy with them, it's going to get progressively more exciting and intense, which will make them more turned on, making them want to spend more on the content. Now, this part is very important, so really pay attention to it. The messages building up to a pay-per-view and the pay-per-view itself is what I refer to as one block of your sequence. This is super important for later when I show you how to test your sequences, because it helps you to diagnose which part of your sequence is weaker than others. For story-based sexting, each block is a sexual act in the story. For example, the first block may be sexting about a blowjob, using lots of detail, really helping them to imagine it. While you were doing your set, I would slowly put my head down, staring into your eyes, all that shit. All of this is that block which leads up to our pay-per-view. So that's our blowjob block. The next block is pussy eating, something that some subscribers might find more exciting. You'll notice that there are less messages in this block. That's because as your sequence progresses, they're going to get more turned on and impulsive, meaning they need less sexting to buy the pay-per-view. And if you do too much, there's a good chance that they get distracted, they just finish, or you just send more messages than you need to. Then it moves on to the penetration block, which has even less messages and the pay-per-view. And keep in mind, you can have messages after the pay-per-view that are part of the same block. For my testing, and this is important, the next block starts after the last wait for reply step that you send with the pay-per-view. Now, as you're looking at this, very important, this pay-per-view does not have to be related to blowjobs. This one doesn't have to be related to pussy eating, and so on. You're talking about the fantasy of if you were doing that and then you send the pay-per-view, imagining doing that made me do this. Now I'm going to show you some diagrams of why it's so important that you pace your sequences. And what I'm referring to is both the content and what you're talking about. So here we have the subscribers' excitement level, and then we've got each pay-per-view there. Obviously, we want to sell them as many pay-per-views as possible because we make more money that way. The most common thing that I see chatters do is that they'll use their best sexting right at the start. So they'll transition and then all of a sudden, oh my God, do you like squirting? I love squirting. I'd be squirting all over you. Whatever. So you peak their excitement up here, but the problem is sexting can only get more or less exciting. Because if you talk about the same thing on and on and on, they're going to get bored. That's how dopamine works. So they might buy this pay-per-view, that pay-per-view, but suddenly they start getting less and less excited and then they leave. They're bored now. Here's the other thing that can happen. Pretty self-explanatory. Ideally, we want to have a slow burn of our sequence getting more and more exciting over time, where everything you say gets a bit more exciting. Each piece of content is a small step up from the last, and that will sustain them for as long as possible, and they buy more pay-per-views. Something that really helps with this is what I call expanding. Basically, when you're writing your script, you want to use detail in everything you say. This will help to pace your sexting and increase the excitement. For example, a lot of chatters could say, I want to fuck you so bad. Great, amazing. But you could get more words for your idea, saying something like, I want to climb up your body, getting higher and higher until I'm right above your whatever. That's more of a slow burn, more easy for them to visualize, and it will be much easier to keep them engaged. If you just say everything straight to the point, you're going to run out of shit to say in like 10 messages. So that one's really important. Now, like I said, there are two kinds of sexting. There's story-based and there's also situation sexting. This is more for subscribers that literally say they don't like sexting, talking about this hypothetical thing that will never happen. This is where you talk about what the creator is doing right now, so what she's doing in the videos. It's quite helpful for those fans that want to know exactly what happens in every single video because you get to hype it up first and then you sell it. The most common example of this is framing the sequence as opening up to the subscriber. The shy girl, I haven't done this very many times before, which can work pretty well for the first few sequences, but you can't sell 10 sequences to someone saying the exact same thing about opening up. So we think about it the same way. There's still sexting blocks, but each block is going to be hyping up what you're about to do. I got this new toy, but I'm not sure if I'm going to use it, like it's too big, or I'm self-conscious about this particular thing. Like, could I get your opinion on it? It depends what kind of sequence it is and where you are in the sequence. Something that does help for this kind of sexting is try to come up with a reason why the creator is turned on to make it believable. With the story-based sexting, obviously that's because they're talking about this fantasy and the idea of it is turning her on. In this case, if you say, oh, I'm sad, I need a release, you don't have to be that creative, but just having some reason will make it more authentic. If you're going to write a sequence that only uses situation sexting, you should plan the content out quite well. If you have 3 videos back to back going, I'm going to show you my boobs, going to be a bit harder of a sell. So really try to get creative with the content plan because that's what you're going to be relying on to get them through the sequence. Personally, I like to experiment with both story-based and situation sexting in the same sequence. When you start thinking about it as blocks, you can just test how the blocks fit together to retain the fan and get the most money out of your sequence. The first 3 blocks could be situation sexting, then you move into story-based sexting. Something universal that is super important: as soon as a fan buys the pay-per-view, you need to follow up immediately. Don't wait for them to watch it. Try and capture their attention straight away, saying something like, "Now I've got an idea. Want to know what I do next? Now I have a question." Chatters just need to be diligent. After they send a pay-per-view, they need to check in regardless, whether the fan buys or they don't buy. If they don't buy, they need to be prepared to handle the objection. And if they do buy, you need to focus on getting them the next pay-per-view now. There's a lot of money to be lost in just sending a video and forgetting about it. Pay-per-view captions are super important and should not be overlooked. This is the last thing the subscriber's going to see before they make a buying decision. If you have really good sexting, building up the excitement, they're really engaged, and then you go, "What do you think of this? $60. Like literally, that's your caption. A lot of people do that. Why would you fuck it up there? So here's how I think about captioning. Through my testing, curiosity has consistently shown to be the most effective thing for increasing the unlock rate. What I mean by that is getting them interested about something that happens in the video, but not explaining all of it. There are going to be fans that need to know every single detail, but if you can allude to something happening, a lot of them are going to want to buy it to see what that is. You really want to think about pacing your captions as well. Your first few pay-per-views might not have to be the most intense, sexual, vulgar thing ever, with heaps of emojis and all that shit, but as it progresses through your sequence, maybe it will start to look more like that. I also experiment with adding follow-ups after the pay-per-view. So you send the pay-per-view with the caption and you add one more line after, either immediately with the pay-per-view or once they've seen it and when they're deciding to buy it or not. The goal of that is usually to increase the curiosity. If you use a story-based sexting block to build up to a pay-per-view, I would recommend using a caption like this. First, use a line that tells the subscriber you were imagining what you were just talking about in this piece of content. Fuck the thought of doing blah blah blah, or I was imagining doing blah blah blah. Then you just continue your sexting for 2 to 3 more lines talking about the fantasy. I was thinking about sitting right above your face. I was thinking about it going in. Whatever it is. Then just have 1 or 2 lines that mention what it's making you do. I had to feel it for real. I needed to feel my hands there. Something like that. Don't tell them everything, just allude to it. Curiosity, remember? Then I like to finish the caption by asking a question they could only answer by watching that video. Something like, could you resist eating it if I did that right in front of you? Did you prefer the first way or the second way? Is that how you would have done it, or would you have done it differently? And also use their name. I just like to do that. You need to make it pretty clear that you are thinking about doing that thing. I was imagining doing this, not I'm doing that right now, because that's when you're being misleading and when you can upset them, get a chargeback. That's what that first line is for. So the content doesn't have to be related to what you're talking about if you say something like that. Be careful. Again, I'm not going to read them all out, but here's a few examples. Remember, the asterisk is where you use the subscriber's name, and then in the notes section, when you write your script, you put replace asterisk with fan name. Now, if the block leading up to your pay-per-view was situation sexting, so you're literally hyping up what you're about to do, you can be a bit more direct. What you can do is for the first line, use a shock or emotion line. Something like, I did not think I'd be doing this, or how have you done this to me? Just to seem enthusiastic. Then you can have 2 lines which vaguely describe what happens in the video. Curiosity should still apply here, but you can be a lot more direct. You could say, we both knew it had to come off, or I had to feel it at this point. Again, ask a question they could only answer by watching it and use their name. And here's a few more examples of situation sexting captions. Like I said, it can be really effective if you use follow-ups after your caption. You're really trying to just increase the curiosity, making them more likely to buy it. Something like, I can't believe I'm this wet already, fuck. Yep, I'm definitely gonna be sore tomorrow. That one works really well. I'm getting a noise complaint for sure. I must be burning like 1 billion calories right now. Fuck, I can't even type now. I'm literally shaking, and fuck up the typing a bit. I'm definitely gonna regret that one. Obviously, you should make this make sense with where you are in the sequence, like this one with the fucked up typing, probably more towards the end. But experiment with a bit. You can either send it immediately with the pay-per-view, like straight after, or you can get the chatters to set a timer for 1 or 2 minutes and then send it after that. You've got the content, you've created your script, now you need to decide on the pricing structure for your sequence. And remember this, the goal is not to maximize the percentage of fans who buy every pay-per-view, it is to maximize the average revenue per attempted sequence. If you can get a really high percentage of fans to unlock the first 3 in the sequence, that may mean that the sequence generates more money overall than if you've set it up to get a few specific whales to get right to the end. Different accounts favor different pricing structures. It will depend on the creator's niche, the subscribers that you're getting. That's why it's really a matter of testing. I would just stay away from a one-size-fits-all pricing, just test different structures. That being said, if you have no idea where to start, a pricing structure that I have tested and has proven to work quite well for a lot of accounts is something like this. You start with the first pay-per-view around $15 to $20. The next pay-per-view will go up slightly less than double that, so probably 25 to 35. The reason for that is, a really common objection is that fans go, so you're just gonna double the price each time then. The third pay-per-view, you do double this price. By the fourth pay-per-view, we like to jump to at least 100. Then we'll have 2 pay-per-views below 200, 2 that are 200. Then if your chatters are good enough, at the end, you can try to close a piece of content that's more than 200. Obviously, you can't send that in one pay-per-view, so you have to ask them to tip or something like that, making it a little bit more difficult. But if you can do that, I would recommend it. I'm not saying this is the best pricing to use on every account all the time and then it will work forever. I've just tested and this has given us a very high revenue per sequence started most of the time. With each pay-per-view, the percentage of fans who unlock it is going to reduce for a variety of reasons. Maybe they don't make it through the block, maybe it's too expensive. I will always assume that the more pieces of content we send, the less people are going to buy them. So that's why sometimes you need to optimize for the subscribers who are just not going to unlock that many. A lot of agencies will try to have these little jumps in price each time, hoping they get more people through it when there are other factors that are making them leave anyway. Sometimes it can be better to jump up in price faster if the content is going to be a bottleneck. What I mean by that is if the creator maybe isn't showing that much, or the videos are quite similar, something like that. Sometimes it can be better to charge a bit more upfront, assuming that less subscribers are going to continue past those pieces of content. And on the flip side, sometimes super high quality content can jump up in price slightly slower, because it'll be easier to retain them throughout the sequence because the content's really good, and that's where you make sure that the pricing doesn't become the constraint. They're just 2 interesting things to think about that I've found as I've tested sequences. I keep talking about testing sequences, but how do we actually do that? Again, this is for Infloww, but when you look at the sequence and you can see all of the steps, for normal steps, just messages, you'll be able to see how many times it's been sent. And for pay-per-view steps, you'll be able to see its price, how many times it's been sent, and the amount of times it's been purchased. Now quickly, I want you to download the sequence analysis tool that I've put in the description because I'm going to show you how to use that in a second. So what are the data points that I look at to determine how a sequence is performing? Well, there's 2 that I use for the overall sequence effectiveness. The first being revenue per sequence started, starting from the first step. Basically, this means how much revenue do we make per fan on average who receives the first step of the sequence. So from the start of the transition, if that's where your sequence starts. The formula for that is the total sequence revenue divided by the number of times you sent the first step. There's also revenue per sequence started from the first pay-per-view. Now, why do we have two different metrics here? Obviously, this metric is going to be the most important. We want to make more money for every time we start the sequence. But by looking at the revenue per fan who receives the first pay-per-view, it's much easier to diagnose our pricing structure. The formula for this is the total sequence revenue divided by the number of times the first pay-per-view was sent. I'll explain why we need both of these in more detail in a second. The next three metrics are for measuring the effectiveness of the sexting blocks, so the messages leading up to a pay-per-view and the pay-per-view itself with the caption. We have block completion rate, the percentage of fans who receive the start of the block and then will get to the pay-per-view in that block. Obviously, if a bunch of fans are dropping off in the middle of a block, something is wrong with what you're saying. Maybe you have too many wait for reply steps, something like that. The formula for this is the number of times you sent the pay-per-view in that block divided by the number of times you sent the first message in that block, because that will tell us how many of the subscribers that get the start of it also get the pay-per-view, that don't drop off. Then we have block unlock rate, which is pretty obvious. It's just the unlock rate for the pay-per-view. The formula for this is the amount of times that the pay-per-view was unlocked divided by the amount of times it was sent. Then we have block continuation rate. This is the percentage of fans who buy a pay-per-view in that block and then start the next block. This is an important metric for the quality of the content in your block. The formula for this is the number of times we sent the official start of the next block divided by how many times the pay-per-view was unlocked. When I say the official start of the next block, what I mean is you don't want to just look at the next message after the pay-per-view, because in some sequences that will be sent as a follow-up, like we spoke about. You want to measure how many times the message that was sent after the last wait for reply step in that block, because that means the subscriber watched the content, they replied, and you sent them the next one. They started the next block. Now, there are four main variables that we can change when we're testing our sequence. There's the block itself, so the messages leading up to the pay-per-view. There's the caption, pretty obvious, the whole pricing structure of the sequence, and the content itself. I generally test a sequence for a 2 to 4 week period, then I'll change one variable and test it again, and see if we can increase that revenue per sequence started metric. This is how I think about which variables to change to increase the sequence's effectiveness. Obviously, the revenue per sequence started from the first step is our North Star metric, the thing we want to increase the most. In fact, if that doesn't increase, our sequence isn't more effective. So if this number isn't where we want it to be, we can start looking at our blocks. If a block has a very low completion rate, then we might want to think about changing the messages in that block to retain the fans throughout it and get them to the pay-per-view. If the unlock rate in a block is low, then maybe we want to look at the caption, work on that to see if we can increase the unlock rate that way, but you can also look at the pricing. But I would recommend doing one at a time, and I'll typically do the caption first. If the continuation rate is low in a block, so a subscriber unlocks the pay-per-view and then they just drop off, they don't move on to the next block, maybe the content is an issue. Obviously, there are things like the chat is not following up, but assuming you've got that handled, I would look at the content. Now, revenue per sequence started from the first pay-per-view can tell us how effective our pricing is. The reason I look at this and not just overall revenue per sequence started is because this removes the transition. A lot of the time, you're going to lose people from the very start of your sequence to where the first pay-per-view is sent. So to isolate the pricing variable, we just look at the sequence from the first pay-per-view. And also, if the RPSS from the first pay-per-view is much higher than the RPSS from the first step, it means that your first block or your transition is weak. Your chatters are starting the sequence with heaps of fans, but none of them are even getting to the pay-per-view. So if that's your problem, work on the first block. Now, we prefer to focus on increasing the completion rate and unlock rate to retain the fans throughout the sequence. those are the metrics that we try to increase first. That's because it's really easy to experiment with literally different words. Once we've got it to a point where we're happy with the unlock rate and the continuation rate of our blocks, that's when we can start testing different pricing structures to see if we can increase the RPSS from the first pay-per-view. If we're getting a lot of fans through the whole sequence and we can increase the price, we're going to make more money. But that only applies until you start getting fans dropping off because it's getting too expensive too quickly. Now, usually I'll change content last because it's the most difficult. You have to request more content from the creator, and I like to optimize everything else, and then we can start playing around with that. That being said, it can make a huge difference to how effective your sequence is, obviously, especially for that continuation rate. This is the sequence analysis tool you can use to better understand how your sequences are performing. Once you've completed your testing period for one of your sequences, you just want to come here and duplicate the template. Rename it to the name of your sequence. We're going to have one tab per sequence so you never lose any of your data. So if we wanted to analyze our date night sexting sequence, we come here, copy that, make sure that it's in the bottom to top format, so the normal one, otherwise it will not work. So just copy it straight off your sequence template. I'm going to paste it in here from this cell. The first thing you need to do is split up the blocks within your sequence. So that's this column here. Obviously, the start of the first block is going to be the very first message in the whole sequence. So we check that there, looks good. Now, like I said before, the official start of the next block is after the last wait for reply in the previous block. So in this case, we've got our pay-per-view, and there's one more message we sent after it. So the next message is the official start of block 2. That's the start of block 3, block 4, block 5, 6, and that's all. Next, we need to mark our pay-per-views. So we've got a pay-per-view here, pay-per-view here. Next, you need to open up your sequence on Infloww so we can start inputting the data. What we need to put in is the sends for every standard message like this, and the sends, unlocks, and price of each pay-per-view step. So our first step is 74. Now, when we get to our first pay-per-view step like this, that's where we want to come here, look at our price, sends, and unlocks. We've got 65 sends, 20 unlocks, and it's priced at 19. And then we repeat that for the rest of the sequence. Now that all of our data has been filled in, we can see all of our metrics, how many pay-per-views, how many steps, how much it generated gross. We can see our RPSS for the first step and our RPSS for the first pay-per-view. We also get a breakdown of each of our blocks individually. We can see the completion rate, the unlock rate, and the continuation rate for each block. This is going to help you to understand how to diagnose and further improve your sequence. But if you need a bit of extra help with that, if you come into this cell here, just copy it, open up ChatGPT or whatever you use, paste in the prompt. That's going to send it a pre-constructed prompt that contains all of your data from the sequence analysis tool. It's going to diagnose the script and try and recommend you the best changes that you can make to improve RPSS. It gives you a general overview of your sequence as well as a block-by-block review, breaking them all down individually. It will then recommend 2 possible tests that you can try to increase RPSS. It's really up to you to read through them and see which one you want to try. In this case, it's recommended changing the caption in block 1, I would probably agree with that, or changing the messages in block 1. I made it provide 2 possible tests just so you can weigh it up for yourself, but you should ideally only test one thing at a time. Obviously, you can challenge it a little bit, ask it some questions. Then all you need to do is make the changes to your sequence, test it again, and keep trying to improve that RPSS. Keep in mind, for all of this to work, your chatters do need to follow the sequence properly. They can't just skip steps because they feel like it. If they're always needing to do that, there's probably something wrong with your sequence. And the one thing that's next to impossible to script out is your objection handling. But it's fine, because I've got an entire video all about handling objections so you can turn more of those no's into yeses and get more fans through your sequence. So watch that. That's there. Enjoy the rest of your day.